On today's Locked On Giants podcast, a look at who raised their stock this spring and who didn't. That and more coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, a credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On Giants, as well as for New York Giants on SI. Find my written work over at si.com/NFL/Giants. And welcome on in to my everydayers, my Blue Crew community members, any newcomers out there, and of course, everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. It is appreciated. And on today's Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to do our stock report. I know I spoke about it last week, and I finally had an opportunity to put it together. So segment one, we're going to take a look at those who raised their stock. Segment two, we're going to take a look at those who maybe, didn't quite make the cut. And then in segment three, I have a special interview for you. I spoke with Nilay Shah. He is a senior VP of marketing and branding for the New York Giants. And he was nice enough to come on to talk about the New York Giants 100th anniversary celebration. They have an event coming up Thursday that is a night with legends. So he spoke a little bit about that and also gave us a little bit of background as to, what went into the celebrations and whatnot, and also teased to some of the events that are coming up for the 100th anniversary special. So a little special extra for you guys and gals on the Locked On Giants podcast. So thanks again for being a part of it. Let's get started. Now, before I get into the stock report, very important for me to put a disclaimer out there. Number one, yes, the practices were padless. No, there was no contact allowed. So therefore, any analysis, any evaluation, you kind of have to take with a grain of salt, because until you see contact, until you see pads come on, there are certain things you can tell and certain things you can't tell. So I'm aware of that. So when I put this together, I kind of tried to look outside of the box a little bit in terms of, not only what we saw, but in terms of how quickly guys were grasping or not grasping the system or what they were being taught. Any injuries that might have popped up, or any, guys who weren't able to work as much as you thought they might have been able to. And I kind of just factored all that in together when I put together my stock report. So that's a little background as to how I approach this. That said, let's take a look at the stock up. And I think we have to start with first round draft pick Malik Nabers. I mean, look, you guys have been reading about him probably all spring long. I know I've talked about him here on the podcast. I've written about him over on Giants on SI. Malik Nabers, ladies and gentlemen, comes as advertised. All right. Now, in addition to the separation, in addition to the speed, in addition to the elusiveness, the thing that I think really helped raise his stock for the Giants is how quickly he has acclimated and picked up the playbook. All right. Now, when you look at receivers in the spring, you say, okay, you know what? The cornerbacks, they can't play press coverage. They can't bump the guy. They can't put their hands on the guy. So, of course, the receiver is going to have the advantage. But with Malik Nabers, push that aside, folks. The fact that this young man not only picked up the playbook as quickly as he did, this according to head coach Brian Dable, and of course according to Mike Groh, the receivers coach, this young man is quite something else. I mean, to watch him, the way he would split defenses, the way he would lead defenders, basically sucking in his dust, quite a thing to see. And I think I made the comparison. I might have made it the other day, in which I said he reminds me very much of a younger and stronger Odell Beckham Jr. He just has a better play strength about him than I recall Odell having when he first came out of school. So I'm really excited about Malik Neighbors and what he could potentially bring to this offense. Um, I don't know that if he's necessarily going to be 1,000-yard receiver this year. He certainly has the potential, but this young man really, really looked impressive in the spring. And again, kudos to him for picking up the stuff in the classroom as quickly as he did. All right, this next guy who I believe raised his stock, not somebody we talked about a whole lot, but I think he deserves his kudos. Fellow wide receiver, Wan'Dale Robinson. Now, if you think back to where Wan'Dale Robinson was this time last year, he was recovering from the ACL injury that he suffered in the season prior. Little uncertain, little unsure about what his future held. Would he be able to hold up? Would he be ready for training camp? And so he did what he could, determined to fight. He was determined to fight his way back, but there was still that, being held back because of his physical status at the time. This year, that injury is firmly in the past. Wan'Dale Robinson coming off of a decent year for the Giants last year. I mean, I think a very underrated year for him. And, once you come back from a knee injury, like such as what he had, sometimes it could be a little, you could be a little hesitant as to, can you push off of it? Can you take a hit? Can you cut? Can you do all the things you need to do as a receiver? Well, Wan'Dale Robinson has done all that. And not only has he done all that, but you watch him in the offense this year and just the many talents that he brings, the way they can use him. They can use him out of the backfield. They can use him in the slot. They can use him out wide. They can put him in motion. There's just so much that this young man can do. I mean, you talk about Malik Neighbors being a chess piece. Wan'Dale Robinson can be just as much of a chess piece for this Giants offense. And I would not be surprised if come the end of the year, Wan'Dale Robinson has the second most receptions on this Giants team. I really believe that this guy is going to really be a big and important piece to the Giants offense this year. All right, another guy. Let's go to the defensive side. Cordell Flott, cornerback. All right, now this is kind of interesting because I've spoken about this before. I've said, the Giants 3 times it's been reported they tried to upgrade that CB2 position. They tried with Williams, they tried with Steven Nelson, they tried with White. All 3 times it didn't happen. So now you have the coaches coming out and saying, hey, we have confidence in Cordell Flott. Well, Cordell Flott, if the season were to start tomorrow, he's going to be our cornerback too. All right, well, that right there is a plus for Cordell Flott. The fact that he's ahead of Nick McLeod, who quite frankly, I thought was, when Nick McLeod was called upon by the coaches to play last year, I didn't think Nick McLeod did that bad of a job. So the fact that the Giants are saying, okay, you know what, Cordell Flott, you played slot for us last year. We're going to move you back to the outside, which is where you played in your rookie season. And we're going to just give you that chance because we like your skill set. That's a win for Cordell Flott. Now, the job is his to lose. It's up to him to really, hold on to it and convince General Manager Joe Schoen, head coach Brian Daboll, that they do not need to go and add another veteran to that group. Because even though the Giants have added some veterans to that group, that's still a position where I have to admit I'm still a little iffy about as to whether or not the Giants have everything they need for the cornerback position. All right, I'll give you a couple more. Back to the offensive side of the ball. Joshua Ezeudu, offensive lineman. Now, Josh Ezeudu, for those who haven't been following along, has been getting snaps at tackle. He played a little bit left tackle when Andrew Thomas earlier in the spring wasn't able to go. He played right tackle, and he's been working with the first team. Now, some of you are saying, oh my God, I don't want to see Joshua Ezeudu at tackle. But here's the thing. With Matthew Nelson, who was signed to presumably be the swing tackle, sideline all spring. I believe he had an ankle issue, if I'm not mistaken. But the point is he was sidelined all spring. So Joshua Ezeudu got some of those snaps, and he, was able to take advantage of them. And you watch, the offensive line drills, and you see, Carmen Brasillo working with Azudu to work up, to build up Azudu's confidence. That was a big problem for Azudu in the past. It's just, whenever he would get beaten, his confidence would go down the tubes. So this year, it wasn't clean. When he was out there, you can't honestly say, oh, he was like a brick wall, because again, you don't have the pads on and you don't get to see that. But you did see Azudu, if he did get beaten, he didn't get down on himself. And that right there is, I think, a big win for that young man. Now, whether or not he ends up as a swing tackle, I don't know. But the fact that he's, really working on offensive tackle, and plus he can play guard, the more you can do on that offensive line, the better your chances of being a contributor at some point, because we all know injuries are going to happen at some point. All right, I will give you, let me see, I think I have one more. Yep, one more. Tyrone Tracy Jr., the running back. Now, Tracy is interesting because, as we all know by now, he is a converted wide receiver turned running back. Doesn't have a lot of experience at the running back position, but he's been able to incorporate some of, that wide receiver training that he had for a number of years into his game. And I just think that, when you look at that running back by committee that the Giants have, they have Devin Singletary, who's going to be the main guy. Tyrone Tracy has a pretty good chance, I think, of being running back 2 in that committee approach. What he needs to show, and what we weren't able to see, because again, no pads, no contact, is how well did he do with pass protection. That's the big key with him. So that's something we're going to be keeping an eye on, obviously, once we get to training camp and the pads go on. But the other thing with Tyrone Tracy is he's a potential kickoff returner. That new kickoff return rule that they have. He got some snaps, or some opportunities, I should say, to return the kickoff. So we'll see where he fits in. But I just have a feeling that Tyrone Tracy is going to play a much, much bigger role as a rookie than you would expect. All right, coming up next, whose stock didn't quite rise? I have a few guys for you. I'll tell you who and why right after this. Hey, Giant fans, summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. And you can bet it all on FanDuel. No matter what you're into, you'll find something that matches your interests and a whole host of odds, stat lines, money lines, and more to bet on when you hook up with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, when you sign up for an account with FanDuel, you'll get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 to bet on everything from the finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and thank you again for spending part of your day with us here on Locked On. It is appreciated. And coming up this week on Locked On, I've got tomorrow Paul Dottino, Giants beat reporter for WFAN, also does some broadcast work for the team. He is going to be on the program with me. Always a blast when Paulie comes on. I mean, he and I could probably talk Giants, for hours, but we try and keep it, streamlined as best as we can. But still, that was a pretty interesting conversation. So he's going to be on the program with me tomorrow. And then on Thursday, I'm going to kick off my annual Giants opponent preview series. So basically, I invite my colleagues from the other teams, that the Giants are going to play. I invite those Locked On hosts onto the program. And basically, I asked them a bunch of questions, breaking things down, new coaches, new offenses, new players, how do they match up, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of a little overview to kind of get everybody caught up. Because if you're like me, you don't have time to really keep up with the rest of the opponents. So this is a good way to kind of get it, the Cliff Notes version, if you will, of where the opponents are. And up first in the series is going to be David Harrison of Locked On Commanders, who is really fantastic. So I hope people tune in to those shows. I think they're, they're pretty good. I really enjoy them, and I hope you will tune in. All right, let's get back to this edition of Locked On Giants. We're looking at stock report, and we just finished stock up. Now we're going to take a look at stock down. Now, again, as a reminder, these are people who, didn't necessarily look bad on the field. I didn't put a whole lot of, emphasis on the performance because, again, obviously without pads, one side can be favored over the other. So you got to kind of weigh that or consider that when you're putting together these stock reports. But I kind of looked at a bigger picture. And I'm going to start off with Azeez Ojulari for a stock down. Now, Ojulari, as we know, last year dealt with some injuries. To my knowledge, I don't think he finished the season with any injuries. I think he was quote unquote healthy or as healthy as could be. So I'm really not sure why Ojulari didn't get a whole lot of team drill work. It could be that, the coaches wanted to see Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. Maybe they wanted to try some other stuff up, but that would be concerning to me if I'm Ojulari because he's going into his contract year, didn't get a whole lot of opportunities. Is he nursing something? It's possible. This time of year, Dable doesn't necessarily tell us everything when somebody's injured. So it's certainly possible that he was nursing something. But, when you're going into a contract year and you're already looking at having your snaps reduced because they just acquired somebody at your position who is, regarded as much better, that would be a concern. So just something to keep an eye on there. I don't think Ojulari is necessarily in jeopardy of being cut, but certainly you would have liked to have seen a little bit more from him this spring just to see how he was moving around. Did he learn anything new? That sort of thing. So that was kind of a disappointment for me. All right, the next guy, stock down, Evan Neal. Now some of you are going to say, "Oh gosh, you're picking on Evan Neal again. He's hurt." All right, I get that. I know he's coming off of the ankle injury. I know he's had injuries in the past. But here's what I can't get past, guys. Evan Neal did limited work for OTA number 3 and OTA number 5, the two that were open to the media. Then all of a sudden for OTA number 9, nothing. For the 2 days of the mandatory minicamp, nothing. The explanation from head coach Brian Dable was they were backing off of him because they want him healthy for the start of training camp. So Dable was asked, well, did he have a setback? Did Neal have a setback? And he said that he didn't, that they just wanted to back off of him. So here's what I'm wondering about. Now, unless Neal was going full blast in the practices that were closed to the media, it sounds like he wasn't doing a whole lot. So what exactly are you backing off on? Did he experience soreness maybe? If he did, that might be considered, a setback. What are you backing off from? Usually when a guy is coming back from injury, you want to gradually build them up, build them up, build them up, not back off. So something just isn't adding up there, especially, you see Evan Neal, he came out for the 2 days of the mandatory minicamp, got on the exercise bike, the stationary bike, and he pumped the heck out of that bike. All right. Now, some people will say, they watch him walk and they say, well, he was walking kind of slow and with a limp. I would say maybe he had just a slight limp, but nothing, too serious, at least from what I could see. And just again, based on how he was able to pump at that bike, something's weird there. I don't know what it is, but here's what I do know. You've got a new offensive line coach who's teaching you techniques and different things. And, the coaches, they say, well, Evan Neal is doing great in the classroom. Wonderful. You could do great in a classroom, but unless you can bring what you learned in the classroom out onto the field, what good is it? So I don't know, folks, something's up there. And I just think that Evan Neal not being able to work during the mandatory camp, even if he had done just individuals, something's not right there. And I hope he's ready for camp because this is a big year for him. I can't help but shake the feeling that he may start off on pup. I have no proof of that. This is just my gut feeling, but that's kind of how I'm feeling right now, if I'm being honest with you. So, all right. I have a couple more. I have receiver Darius Slayton. Now, look, Slayton, for the last 5 years, he was the Giants team leader in receiving yardage. Very good receiver. I think a very underrated and underappreciated receiver. And I'm not saying that his stock dropped, at least in my book, because of the holdout that he had, which really isn't a holdout because it was a voluntary practices that he missed. And I understand, that he wanted his contract adjusted. But here's the thing. Darius Slayton, in all likelihood, is going to lose targets to Malik Neighbors. So to me, when you're a receiver and you haven't cracked 1,000 yards and you're entering what your 6th year, I think it is, he's entering. I just felt like, maybe his hold is going to slip a little bit. I said earlier that I could see Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson being 1 and 2 respectively in terms of receiving yardage. Slayton, I do think is going to be a contributor, but I think his role is going to reduce somewhat. I mean, because you also have Jalen Hyatt in that mix. You've got Allen Robinson who's going to compete for his spot. You got different guys that they're going to want to compete with, and I don't know. I just feel like Darius Slayton. I don't see him leading the team in receiving yardage this year. Good receiver. I like the young man. I have a ton of respect for him for how he's conducted himself. But I just feel like this is going to be it for him. This is going to be his last year. It is a contract year. The fact that the Giants didn't want to extend it should tell you all you need to know. The fact that they gave him incentives that, despite having Malik Neighbors on the team, if Neighbors is healthy, what are the odds that Slayton is going to make those incentives? Probably slim to none. So I hated to put him in the stock down category, but all the signs are pointing that way. So one more guy I'm going to give you. And this is a guy I know some of you have asked me about, going back to the running back group, and that is Jashawn Corbin. Now, I know there's a bunch of Jashawn Corbin fans out there, and a lot of you are like, so Pat, do you think he's going to make the roster? I would be surprised. All right. So, again, you look at the running back committee, you've got Devin Singletary. You're going to have Tyrone Tracy. You're going to have Eric Gray. Those two are going to slug it out for the number 2 guy. And I could see Dante Miller making the roster ahead of Jashawn Corbin. Again, for the kickoff return role duty, that would give him an advantage. Now, some people will say, well, maybe Dante Miller goes to the practice squad and Jashawn Corbin goes to the roster. I don't know, guys. I don't see it that way. I would be very surprised if that's how it works out. I just think that, Jashawn Corbin, look, I thought he should have made the roster last year, and he didn't. They cut him. He ended up on Carolina's practice squad. Then when the injuries happened at running back, they brought him back. I would be very surprised if Jashawn Corbin makes the roster this year. Good player. He'll catch on somewhere, but I just don't think it's going to be with the Giants. So, all right, that's my list of stock down. Previous segment, I did stock up. What did you think? Did I miss anybody? Weigh in on the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on the audio platforms, you can drop me an email. My contact information is in the show notes. All right, coming up next, we're going to hear from Nilay Shah, the New York Giants Senior Vice President of Marketing and Branding Strategy, who's going to talk about the New York Giants 100th anniversary celebration and the Night with Legends, which is this Thursday at the theater at Madison Square Garden. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss this. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and coming up, we're going to hear from Nilay Shah, the Senior Vice President of the New York Giants, in charge of marketing and branding strategy. And we talked about the Giants, A Night with Giants Legend, which is this Thursday. There are limited tickets available, less than 100 tickets available. So if you're interested in going, don't wait. They're going fast. They've got quite a big lineup coming for this event. They're going to have the busts coming in from Canton of all the Giants who've been enshrined in the Hall of Fame and a whole bunch of other goodies. So Nilay is going to tell you all about it in this interview, which starts now. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and I'm very happy to have with me on this next segment special guest Nilay Shah. He is the New York Giants Senior Vice President of Marketing and Brand Strategy. And the New York Giants, for those of you who might have been on vacation or not paying attention, they're celebrating their 100th anniversary this year, and there's a whole lot of events being planned, including a special event being planned for the theater at Madison Square Garden. That's going to be this Thursday, the 20th. And Nilay has kind of been the guy who has been spearheading some of this stuff. So he is here to talk a little bit about that. Nilay, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Patty. Thanks for having me. Yeah, you hit it. It's a big event on Thursday, and it's been 2 years of planning, and we're excited to bring some of this stuff to life to celebrate with our most important people, our fans.
Yeah, definitely. It should be a good one. And Nilay, before we get into the actual program, can you just talk a little bit about, I mean, it's not often that you're with an organization that's celebrating 100 years and that has the rich history that the New York Giants has. Can you just reflect on that a little bit, if you would?
Yeah, no, it's been a great process. We started almost 2 years ago, and we are the fourth team to celebrate their 100th season. The Packers, the Bears, the Cardinals, and now us. And really, when we all started to sit in a room 2 years ago, we really defined four key objectives. Right, the first one was. We needed to make sure we celebrated all 100 seasons. It's easy for us to gravitate towards the four recent Super Bowls, but there's four championships pre Super Bowl era that we needed to make sure that we, celebrated in some capacity this season. That's from 1927, 1934, 1938, and obviously 1956. The second thing that we aligned on was the fact that we needed to figure out how to tell our story on a national level. Obviously, we have our platforms, our social media platforms, but how can we reach that 17-year-old kid in California who may not know about the history and the advancements that this organization has made to make what football is today? The third is we want to make sure we had unique activations for all of our constituents. So the first one being season ticket members, obviously our most important, but there's obviously fans that may never come to the game. There's fans that may come to only one game. How can we make them feel important in their own way? And the fourth, as you know, Patty, this organization is not gratuitous by nature. But if there was ever a year to highlight all the great work that this organization has done in the community over the last 100 seasons and will continue to do, this would be the year to put a PR and marketing touch to it to really make sure that everyone understood from a historical perspective the great work that has and will continue to be done in the community.
You just recently started rolling out the different elements, the Century Red uniform, this program. What has been the response so far from the fan base?
Yeah, I think it's been really positive. I think there's no fans like Giants fans. The logo process in itself, we were very meticulous about how we were going to roll that out. We spent about 6 months researching every single logo, not only in the NFL, but also in the NHL, the NBA. When teams celebrated anniversaries and these big moments, how did they do it? Some teams take their primary logo and add the number 100 to it. We took a little bit different approach where every single element in the design had some significance, whether it's the outlines of the zeros, whether it's the shape of the polo grounds, the 8 laces in that logo for the 8 championships. We really wanted to make sure that when that logo hit the market, everyone knew that there was a historical significance to it. And listen, the uniform has had a mixed reaction, as you can expect. But the thing there is we aligned pretty early that, if there was ever a year where we were going to bring something back, this was the year, right? And we've brought back a lot of our uniforms. As you know, we brought back our legacy uniforms 2 years ago when the NFL celebrated their 75th anniversary. We brought back our uniforms from Yankee Stadium. We said, listen, we're going to go back into the earliest days, pay respect to the players who played for no money, who played in front of nobody, and really use that as a vehicle to celebrate those early days. And listen, if we were to get in a room and design something, would that be it? Probably not. But we did not want to deviate from what it was. We put a little modern twist to it because obviously the uniforms back then were long sleeves, etc. But we really wanted to make sure it was as close to a replication of the different eras of Giants football from those early days. And the players have loved it. Wandell Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, Deontay Banks. When we showed it to them, they are really excited to wear that for our home opener.
You mentioned the players. I mean, can you talk a little bit about what impact or influence, I should say, the players, not just the current players, but maybe some of the legacy players had in the whole development of this 100th year celebration?
Yeah, certainly. I mentioned the uniform and the current players being involved as part of that. But the really big part of this program is this top 100 players, which we'll be announcing in the early parts of July. Essentially, we had an independent council of national and local historians and media members rank basically from 100 to 1 of the 100 greatest Giants of all time. And we'll be rolling those out 10 at a time starting in July, going all the way from 100 to 1 leading into the home opener. And the really impactful story there is, we've had to notify these players, and obviously if the player is deceased, their family members, that they are part of this top 100. And really the reactions that we have got have been incredible. Reactions from Joe Morris, Jeremy Shockey. Joe Morris was driving, and I think Bob Papa had called him when he moved to this, he had to pull over. He was crying. So really, the impact and the feelings that these players and legends have for the organization. And I think Wellington Mara said it best, right? Once a Giant, always a Giant. And that still rings true, that you're able to call these players who have not worn a jersey for 30 years and for them to be feeling the way that they are. It's a testament to this organization and the family nature that it's always been.
Nilay, before we get to the program on Thursday, I want to also ask you about some of the employee takes, because a lot of the employees in the Giants organization, such as yourself, have been there a number of years, some as many as a quarter of a century, the 100 years that the Giants have been around, some even longer. I mean, what kind of input did they give you, and how did you just kind of pull all that together, given, the newness and those that had been there for a long time?
Yeah, no, I think the great thing about this project was it was a completely collaborative one. And really, when we started 2 years ago, these types of celebrations usually start as a marketing project, but you quickly realize in order to do this the right way and to have an impact, the entire organization has to be on board. So we had bi-weekly meetings for over 2 years where every single leader in each respective department, whether it was partnerships, whether it was community, whether it was PR, everybody was weighing in from the beginning. So that way, when we got to the end, everyone really felt good about it, including ownership, and really felt positive and good that all the different elements that we were going to roll out, everyone was on the same page with.
All right, now let's talk about Thursday's program, which is a big one. It's going to be at the theater at Madison Square Garden. I believe it's a 2-hour program, if I'm correct, and it's
Yep.
going to feature all kinds of cool events. Why don't you just give us a little overview of what fans can expect?
Yeah, no, we're super excited for this event. You mentioned it, the theater at MSG on Thursday. Program starts at 6:30, doors open at 5:30, and really, it's a collection of the 20 greatest Giants of all time. And we've certainly been blessed to be able to celebrate a lot of the Super Bowls and have had anniversaries of players coming back, whether more recently the 07 and 11 teams. But this will be really cool because it's era based. So you have people from Pete Gogolak to Brian Kelly to Tiki Barber, players that have made a major impact on this organization. And really, I'm happy to report LT will be there, Phil Simms will be there, Eli will be there. It will be a great collection of stories and really you're reminiscing about the greatest times in Giants football. And then the other cool part is when fans first come into the theater, we worked with the Pro Football Hall of Fame to get all 22 Hall of Fame busts there. So you'll be able to take your picture with it. The 4 Super Bowl trophies will be there. And the really interesting part was we needed to make sure that from a branding perspective, we really highlighted all 100 seasons. So we have basically 3-foot wall posters across the entire theater, going back with photos from 1927 all the way up into the last Super Bowl. So it'll be a way for fans to reminisce, learn a little bit, and there'll be other artifacts and things. And then we have all of the 100 season merchandise that we put out, whether it's helmets, footballs, hoodies, t-shirts, hats. It'll be a way for everyone to celebrate together.
So sort of like an expanded legacy club.
Yeah, it's going to be, the Legacy Club has a lot of stuff. So just for our space requirements, probably not to that extent. But once you combine all of the artifacts with the legends, it's going to be unlike anything anyone has ever seen before.
And there are still tickets available as of this recording?
Yeah, we're basically under 100 tickets left, so they're going up fast, and we anticipate anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 people at this event, which will be one of our bigger events. And really the cool part of it is all net ticket proceeds are going to our Giants Foundation. So when we talked about how do we make an impact in the community and continue to do so, that's a small way for us to obviously check that box as well.
That sounds like an exciting event. And Nilay, I know you don't want to give away too much, but is there anything you can talk about, maybe tease a little bit as to what's coming up next in this year-long celebration?
Yeah, the next biggest thing will be Hard Knocks. We're excited for that. First episode hits July 2nd, 9 p.m. And really that, again, same thing. We sat in a room and we said, hey, how do we tell our story on a national level? Joe and Dave's have been great to us from an internal production standpoint, giving us all levels of access that we've requested. Obviously, once you incorporate it with NFL Films and Hard Knocks, it's on a different level, but they've been great. They've obviously built a great staff, and really, football obviously is what this is all about. And to give our fans the ability to take a peek under the hood at, a level of access that they've never seen in building this 100th season team, we're excited to roll that out in a few weeks here.
And then Nilay, before I let you go, just give everybody the URL or where they can find all the information about all the programs, all the goodies and stuff that's coming up this year.
Yeah, everything Giants 100 related is as simple as going to giants.com/100. We've announced a bunch of things, but there's a lot more in store. The one thing I didn't mention is we do have the Wellington Mara documentary that will be launching in late October. And really, what better way to honor someone who's had such a huge impact on the organization. Again, it was, as we think through on a national scale, that will air on NFL Network. Really give fans who might not know about the rich history of the team an opportunity to learn about why this organization is one of the founding, teams and really has made a great impact into making the game what it is today.
Nilay, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you got a lot going on right now, getting this all together and getting ready for this 100th event. It should be a great one. Giant fans, if you haven't looked into tickets, there are still tickets available. They're going fast, as Nilay said, so please check it out if you're even thinking about going. He is Nilay Shah, the Giants Senior Vice President of Marketing and Brand Strategy. Nilay, thank you again for coming on with me.
Thanks, Patty. Always a blast.
All right, Giant fans, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Nilay Shah. I want to thank Nilay for coming on. He's got a lot going on right now, so I appreciate him taking a few minutes out of his schedule to come on and talk to us about the night with Giants Legends, as well as what they've got coming up for the 100th anniversary, which is this year. I think August 1st is the official 100th birthday of the New York Giants franchise. So lots of great stuff planned by the franchise, and there's going to be something for everybody. So hopefully you'll check it out and hopefully you'll enjoy it, because look, you only celebrate 100 years once every 100 years. So it's going to be kind of cool. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. As always, thank you for spending part of your day with us. And don't forget, tomorrow, my guest is Paul Latino, Giants radio reporter, WFAN, also part of the Giants broadcast team. We're going to hear what he has to say. It's going to be a great conversation. I promise you, you won't want to miss it. So I'll see you tomorrow, Giant fans.